Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to see you all here after all this time together in Lyon. And those of you that are possibly following us on the live stream, thank you for joining us. Warm greetings from all of us here. Shall we give them a... And all the best to all of you, wherever you are. We are coming out of a hellish time for our sectors. There's no other way to put it. We should respect and acknowledge how difficult this period has been for many of us, but at the same time allow ourselves during those 4 coming days to rejoice in what we have as a network, take stock of it, and embrace the theme of this Lyon event, that is, what we want to and should bring into the future with us. More on that soon. The preparation for this IETM Lyon meeting plenary has been extraordinary, and there are many to thank. First, our funders. We want to thank Creative Europe, the Flemish community, the French Ministry of Culture, Grand Lyon, City of Lyon, and Goethe Institute. Now I went my iPad off. For their generous support. And over to you, Kylie.
Bonjour et bienvenue tout le monde. C'est vraiment magnifique d'être ici à Lyon. Et quelle superbe opportunité pour découvrir tous les quartiers différents à Lyon, la capitale gastronomique de France. Yummy! Il y a 10 endroits à Lyon qui nous donnent leur espace et contribuent beaucoup à cette réunion. Un grand merci. Change the slide. Et le Théâtre des Célestines, le Théâtre Comédie Odeon, Culture Next, Artefact, Centre National de Danse, TNP, Maison de la Danse, Pôle en Scène, les Subs, le Parc à Sable, Maison de l'Environnement et le Musée de Confiance. Et aussi, un grand merci à nos autres partenaires qui ont rendu cela possible. C'est interdit, Honda, ah oui, c'est bon, Caravelle, AADN, NTH8 et Ville de Lyon. Thank you to these partners. A big applause, please. We would like you to know who is here from the board and the advisors of IETM, because it's important that you engage and talk with us over the coming days. So I would like to ask, please, first, the board of IETM, please stand. Merci. Stand. There must be more than 2. Barbara, I can't see everybody. Where are the others? Oh, they're at the back. They're at the back waving. Oh, there's more at the back. Okay. And I also would like to ask the advisors to stand, and these are the people who give enormous time to the future of IETM, the think tank. Please, advisors. Thank you. But most importantly, we want to welcome the members or the first-time visitors to IETM. So if you are an IETM virgin, please stand. Super! Bienvenue, bienvenue, bienvenue! Back to Elsa.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you all for participating in this little participatory exercise of ours. Last but not least, we want to thank the special collective of IETM members and supporters that was formed around creating this meeting. We will give you things in more detail in the brunch on Sunday, but for now, thank you all. And represented by Sergio and Nicola, the local organizer, are going to step on the stage and say a few words.
You, Nicola. Thank you also. Thank you, Kathy, for introducing us. And Nicola is starting.
Yes, I'm starting. Dear colleagues, dear IETM members, and dear friends, here we are now in Lyon. After so many work we did together, we are so happy to welcome you in our beautiful city of Lyon.
So this IETM plenary meeting in Lyon is an idea that has been on the table like for a long time, for almost 2 years, and it's now finally happening. 6 months ago, as the COVID-19 measures started to be again, sorry for that, started to slowly be lifted, we mobilized several friends and colleagues to revive the idea. It was a time when funders and partners would tell us over and over again that they had no visibility for summer and beyond. This is for the context.
Yes, a strange context, Sergio, and to prepare an international meeting. So the way we designed it, first of all, that we should make it happen. And with very limited resources in very special conditions, and our objective is to organize a warm and friendly meeting, because also we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of IETM this year. Thank you. At some point, what really matters to all of us is to move forward and to get back on stage again collectively.
And that's how the theme of this meeting came up. A few words about the theme. Transmission. Transmission is a central issue at a time when all the stakeholders of our sector must build and rebuild again from the rumble. After the shock this pandemic caused to the cultural world and to the world tout court. Transmission is also about dialoguing. It's about passing on experiences, and it's an opportunity to share knowledge and know-how, yet questioning them at the same time. From local to international, it also allows us to reopen the agenda of our sector very broadly, addressing our whole performing arts ecosystem.
Through this meeting, our aim is to reopen spaces for dialogue wherewith performing arts can thrive in our community. You read maybe this word, parcours. So we took some time to decide whether to call it parcours in French or route or another name. But this parcours is conceptually important for us because it is a way to open our city to you, and also a response to the limitation of meeting spaces directly related to the health crisis.
Last but not least, keeping this theme, this transmissions theme in mind, we felt that we really had to give the younger generations and future professionals and members, probably, let's hope so, the opportunity to talk, the chance to speak. And we therefore invited students to this meeting, to this plenary meeting, in order to share with them the challenges of our sector. So I really would like you and ask you to welcome them as warmly as you can in a very open-minded IETM spirit. So let's...
Sergio, talking about students and the young generation, it makes me think of the future. What we've been doing is not only organizing a meeting, it is launching a process that will continue under the values of cooperation, collective, friendship. And we would like to continue in the future the conversation with our friends and colleagues in Lyon, in Clermont-Ferrand, in the regions, with students, of course, but also with all of you.
We are about to finish now to conclude, and we want to thank you very much. Thank all the members of our collective. This meeting was initiated, I would say, probably by Nicolas and I. That's why we're here representing the collective. But we really want to thank them for having invested so much time in this adventurous experience. And I will only mention their first names: Valérie, Isabelle, Frédéric, Ina, Julien, Mia, Claudine, Sophie. Let's applaud them because they really need some applause. I also want, on behalf of the collective and on behalf of the network, thank all the venues and all the professionals, the venues and the independents and all people who were involved in some way, shape or form to this event.
And we should also thank Sergio, the Secretariat of the IETM, who trusted us and who supported us in the most difficult moments.
Yes.
A special thank to Francisca and Franz, who were there, who put all their energy in supporting very professionally this the preparation of this project, and also, of course, the funders who supported us from the beginning in the preparation of this meeting and launching this process. As
yes, the local funders, of course, like also said, Grand Lyon, Ville de Lyon, and DRAC, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. So I think it's time now to say thank you again, and to leave the floor for the speakers. So, to also, first of all.
Thank you, Nicola and Sergio. We now proudly introduce to you the contributors of the keynote conversation on transmission. What is important to take with us into the future in this 40th anniversary year? What have past generations given to us? And what do future generations want from us? And we choose to invite a trio for this conversation: a younger generation IETM member, a non-member local of Lyon, yet coming from as far away as you possibly can, and last but not least, a founding member of IETM. Please come to the stage. So I give you Ujvári-Pintér, who has been working as a producer at Hodworks Contemporary Dance Company in Hungary and the curator and program manager of Sziget Festival. György also works as an electronic music producer for dance pieces, and in general in his work is facing all the complexities that independent artists have to deal with all their lives through every single day. I give you also Kylie Walters, a dancer, choreographer, a pedagogue, whose work spans performances, movies, live concerts, and installations. She hails originally from Australia and is now based in France, where she is the director of the dance department of the Lyon Conservatoire National Superieur of Music and Dance. And last but not least, I give you Nele Hertling, founding member of IETM, worked in the Academy of Arts in Berlin for performing arts and music. In 1988, she was responsible for the overall program of the Berlin European Capital of Culture. Nele founded the Hebel Theater in Berlin in 1989, one of the very few places in Germany to produce and present independent international projects. And she created Festival Tanz in August, to name a few of her accomplishments. Nele a little bird told me that you are going to ignite the conversation with a blast from the past. So take it away.
Thank you, I will try. So first of all, to give the truth a chance, I'm not really a founding member because the foundation of the IETM was not in Paris in its first official meeting, but it took place in the same year, 1981, in Polvorici, in a festival that had been created by Roberto Cimetta and Vilja Papa in a small town in Italy, and it came out of a need. I myself started, I will explain what kind of need. I myself started to work in music and theater and dance projects in the mid-60s and already in the Berlin-based Academy of Arts. But at that time, normally in Germany, but not only in Germany, these art forms were mostly in the hands of big traditional institutions and even government that decided on financing productions or touring. So there was not a lot of possibility for younger, radical, more international artworks to tour or to even be produced. So there was a growing need. And the first big step, and to repeat maybe what I said before, it was mostly based on the need of artists. It was not a structural decision. It was based on the need of artists to have better and more open chances to produce and to present themselves. The first important step maybe in that development was the creation of the festival in Nancy, already in the 60s. That was in the period when, especially in France and Germany, it was the time of the students' development against political and social structures, old-fashioned structures. And at the same time, the Festival of Nancy created the atmosphere for artistic and cultural needs. And it, as you may know, and people might remember, it also became a very politically based festival in Nancy. Then there was another important festival based on same or similar ideas in Amsterdam, the Festival of Fools in the 70s. So these festivals made it obvious that the young and more radical performing arts needed a new way of being being in the or having the chance to really produce and present themselves, not anymore under the guidance and power of the big institutions. So that was the feeling in Polvorici of some friends that came together and said, we have to find a new way, and we can only do it together. This was the first decision of sharing something, sharing their experience, sharing their possibilities, their budgets, their experiences, their contacts. So this feeling of being together, trying together to work on a new basis for the performing arts was really the start of the creation of a network. And even the word network at that time was something new. People did not really know what was a network. And I want to quote my old friend Steve Austin from Amsterdam, who really was a founding member in Polvorici, and who said about networks, the network, not only provokes a profound change of mentality that allows one to overcome all kinds of ingrained habits, professional attitudes, and aesthetical obsessions at home, but also stimulates the necessity to develop a sensitivity and sensibility to explore the backgrounds and rituals of one's partner's cultures. And I think that was something quite new at that time and really describes for myself the idea of a network very well. And there was another saying about networks, which you might know. A network will only help you, give you something if you are ready to put something into it. And I think that is, again, something that tells us something about the necessity of sharing, of doing things together. And only with this kind of knowledge sharing, we will be able to fight all the difficulties and dangers we were not only facing in these times, but which are in another way also the problems we have to face today. The successful history of this network, IETM, makes it quite clear until today. And I think that is something to transmit from the past to today. Today, we have to face new challenges and a changed worldwide situation. We have still, just to name some examples, we have still not a problem, but a not very clear situation between East and West traditions and histories. We also face still problems, not really knowing very well the problems between North and South, and of course, not at all about worldwide situation. So there are really challenges which are not new, but we have to face them, combined with the really new challenge of COVID, of migration, of social problems, the division in the world of rich and poor, and many things like that. The question we have to face, how can art and culture act? Where is the role in our changing societies for us? We fight against nationalism, against growing political influences, putting the freedom of art and the freedom of individuals into danger. There are challenges, again, we can only face together. And I think we have to put together all our forces, transmit our experiences, learn from new generations, and understand what we can transmit into the future under new conditions and challenges. For this, coming together as human beings, meetings between individuals is a very important possibility. Therefore, our network, IETM, is something to strengthen and to develop into the future, taking history as a lesson for the future. Let me end with a quote from my opening speech at the IETM meeting in Berlin 2010. When I read this speech, I was really surprised myself. I could have given you this speech today, the whole speech, and you would not have realized it's more than 10 years old. We were facing very, very similar problems under maybe other headlines, but the feeling was the same. And I only will read you the last sentences of that. We, with the privilege of working in the fields of art and culture, have to accept that we are part of a global situation called crisis. We have to rethink our position in society. We have to take responsibility and use all our creative and visionary forces to develop new concepts, to encourage activities, taking risks, sharing knowledge and experience. And in this sense, I think we would start a conversation, a dialogue, which was the word which was used, a dialogue between the three of us. And we hope you will continue this dialogue in the next coming days. Thank you.
Well, IETM was created originally to stimulate the quality, the development, and the context of performing arts, regardless the division between Eastern and Western Europe. It was in the beginning of 1980s, and like as if they were imagining a future that came true, let's say. There was a European integration between the East and the West. But still, what is very striking is that this integration is partly made because the Eastern democracies are not very strong, let's say. There is a formal democracy in many countries, or in several countries at least, but which are not very much strengthened, because we need to understand also what is democracy about. And sometimes I have the feeling that in Eastern Europe, where I'm from, we understood what is capitalism, and we didn't really understand the values behind. And that remains a big question, how much we in Eastern Europe are integrated. But in 40 years of history of IETM, there have been so many things that have been achieved. And we would be so happy to learn these things. In part, we learn them. But it doesn't mean that it's only the Western part of Europe that has to teach something, let's say, to the Eastern part. It would be so patriarchic. I also think that in Eastern Europe as well, we have such a heritage which is much more difficult to share, because it's, for example, sharing resistance and sharing resilience, because we had to face so much of an oppression which the Western European countries, at least in the last, let's say, 60, 80 years, didn't have to face. And now, after the big crisis of 2008, there have been so many things that have been lost also in Western Europe, like, let's say very concretely, fundings, for example, for the arts. How to survive without them. I think that even though in Eastern Europe we have a lot of struggle for survival, we also have this resilience that we can transmit, and transmission maybe starts here.
Yeah. Just picking up on what Nele and Yuri have been saying, this question of resilience, even though it's a word that we hear come up a lot nowadays, but it is so important and so now to talk about resilience, and also lessons that can be learnt by sharing. And I think a point that I was really keen on making, which reiterates a little bit what Nele was talking about as well, was this idea of the most important thing is human to human, coming together, having these moments like this IETM meeting and plenary and sessions where we can kind of re-actualize and take stock of where we are at this moment, because I feel like there's been so many shifts and major shifts, paradigm shifts, to use a sort of a cliched term, in the way we think about things, the way that we want to give artists and everyone working in the performing arts a fair go. When we think about the way we treat one another in the performing arts. And there's nothing better than meetings like this and actually having that human face-to-face contact to talk about these issues. And they keep coming back. There's something cyclical in the nature, as Nele said, a quote from 10 years ago is still relevant today. Of course, we may have a different angle on it. We may be able to bring a bit different light to it. We have new partners, whether they come from the East and they've been slowly integrated into the network. And now today we can talk about the North-South. We're also broadening out in a network to include the Asia Pacific, the African continent, etc. So it's really like about how do we sometimes combine what may seem to be contradictory ideas as well, like how do we keep diversity and keep an economy and ecology in the way we produce things and tour things. So I thought they were interesting points that obviously we're going to talk about, especially after this period of crisis, which was the COVID health epidemic that everyone's been through. And in political theory terms, we talk about kind of a status quo and a kind of muddling through things. And then there's also moments in time when it's moments where the equilibrium has been punctured, or we have a major shift that happens and it makes us reconsider where we are. And this these huge moments where we have to reconsider the very foundations, where we are together. And this is where collective intelligence comes into being. And that's why networks like IETM are incredibly important, because they give us these moments to create and to think together and to re-question and to reposition and just figure out where the hell we are after these huge upheavals and crises.
I would maybe like to come back to you with one idea, which being from Berlin, more or less in the middle between East and West, and with many experiences in that sense, and not only I have the feeling, or more than feeling, that there is still a division in Europe between East and West. And we realize there's maybe a missing curiosity and a missing need from the Western side to really get to know what's going on in so-called East European. I mean, they're East from us, but they are not East European, they're Europeans. And what we feel is that this is in a way a danger in the development in Europe, because it keeps this gap between countries that should really become much closer in their cooperation. And I can only ask people like you, presenters, producers, we should really think we do travel again, but maybe there are also other ways of getting information, getting more information, more contacts, really taking more risks and curiosity to really come to your countries and to the artistic world. It broke up when the wall came down. Everybody was interested. It was a sensation. You could go, but then slowly it went down. And maybe some of you remember there was a big project called Theorem, which helped a bit to really discover what was new. And some big names came out of them, Koršunovos or Valikovsky or people like that. But since then, there is a lack of something which is also under the headline of transmission and of sharing. And I think maybe you can talk about that, but I would only ask you really to take that into a conscious thinking and acting.
In the 90s, when I started to travel around Europe, I started to say everybody that actually, so that there is a real European integration, the traveling should be to both directions. Transmission is a two-way thing. It's not only that the older generation or the Western generations, or the Western people, I mean, should give their knowledge to the other, but it's also the other way around. And yeah, Europe will be integrated when the West will be integrated to the East, and when the East will be integrated to the West. Also, there is the question of South and North, what Kylie mentioned already, and which is also very, very striking. I was very surprised when I moved to Barcelona a couple of years ago to realize that artists, producers, presenters, people in general in Spain have also had this feeling of being on the periphery. And that was surprising for me because I had only a very Eastern perspective. And then I learned that actually it's everywhere. And nowadays we can't only talk about East and West in the European sense, because all the thing shifted. We are not anymore in the center of the world in Europe. We are like in a globalized world. And for example, Kylie comes from another part, which is also the Western world and still not the Western world, with a lot of different heritages, legacies that come all together.
And this idea of legacies and heritages and what we want to keep with us as we're moving forward, and also what we can transmit from generation to generation, the intergenerational question. I work with students, of course, and
and the idea of a two-way process, and of when you're in a network, the network is only as strong as what you bring to it as well. So there's also like listening and learning from the younger generations who are coming up and coming into these networks and into these processes. I think there's a real notion and a real shift in our mentalities where things are slowly becoming more horizontal in their way of being shared. And so the younger generation, they definitely have a voice. They have a lot of ideas, a lot of strong ideas. And I know I learn huge amounts equally from them as they are learning from us, or the sort of teaching team, the faculty at the conservatoire. And there are also questions for as the wheel turns, how do we bring in these voices? How do we bring in these younger voices? How do we, it's the East, the West, the young, the old. It's all these shifts, generational shifts, geographical and geopolitical shifts, and they all bring about shifts in mentality, and how to incorporate this in our decisions as people involved in the performing arts, because actually we are a huge platform to sort of communicate these new ideas and new shifts that are happening.
Once more, coming back to the East-West, but it's true, of course, for all the other divisions, and about mentality, asking about the role and responsibility of art and culture. Of course, we know now, not only, but very visible in some East European countries, there is the danger of political influence and to the existence of art and culture. And talking about the role and possibilities of art and culture, I think there is a point, and we have to use it together. That's for me a very important point for sharing, for doing things together to overcome these dangers which spread not only in your countries, but we see it somewhere else. And coming to the question of shifts, what we also feel through the Corona situation, we realized, all of us, something which we had never thought to be possible: the loss of individual freedom. We suddenly were under the power of law, of things which were told, which we had to do, not to do. And I think it influenced very, very broadly our thinking, our acting, and taking us back into maybe much too much into ourselves, into small groups of people. And again, I think there's the absolutely need of overcoming this, going into ourselves and going out again to be together, to work together, and sharing these forces and possibilities to really present to the world the necessity of art and culture in this situation. So let's think together what we can do, not only talk about it, which is also something we realize. We talk a lot, and of course that's very important, but to really develop concrete, realistic possibilities, how to do it, what to do for climate change, for social problems. We really have to go deeper into these problems to really present ourselves as important part of today's societies.
And transmission is very important in that sense, because the young generation is, as always, is in a very hard situation. On one hand, they just arrive. They don't know where they go. They don't know if they go to a dead end. They don't realize that they go to a dead end road. And this is the responsibility of the older generations to give that legacy to them, to give that heritage. Also, on the other hand, the young generations don't only have to learn, or they don't only want to learn, they also have to bring in their own new experience from a brand new world. And this is their responsibility also to be heard. So it's, on one hand, it's difficult to be heard when you are young, because you have all those, well, as they say in French, the dinosaurs up there. But on the other hand, the dinosaurs also have to understand that, so that their knowledge can survive, they have to bring it to the new generations, because these are the new generations who will become the old generations afterwards. And if they are not able to give away again that legacy, all that we earn together will just fall into oblivion. So this is why we have to learn to listen the old generation, and we have to learn to listen the new generation, and this is how transmission will be ever possible.
I think there's also something about transmission, and Nele was talking about how there was this sort of looking inwards, which occurred especially with the COVID period, and how we need to start creating our communities again. And what's a positive that I see coming along, and what a new generation is really bringing into play, and what we can learn from, is also we can shift between certain realities. Like now we have virtual realities, digital realities opening up, which can go hand in hand with that, you know, ritualistic, very important act of coming together in communion to watch something on a stage or in an urban setting or whatever. So this is something I feel that's opened up, that allows for different singularities, if I can say, or artistic voices to come into play and to be heard above the dinosaurs in a way, if you, because it's a space that's opening up, and a space that the younger generation are really running with. So it's really, for me, it's fascinating to see how those spaces are used to actually create something that's quite beautiful, like different communities. There's always a positive side, there's always a downside, of course. So there are issues of privacy, of consentment, etc., that are inherent in every world or universe. But I find that quite an interesting shift. And that's also something about how do we transmit in the here and now, in the present, in the where we are, and also in these sort of communication channels that are you know, not using our flesh and blood, that are sort of virtually transmitted. So this is a point of tension, a point of possibility for the future, which I find quite exciting, and which can really help to keep in contact, create these communities, and avoid you know, turning around one's belly button, as we say in English.
And this becomes very easy nowadays with of course with the internet, and of course with the social media, just to look at yourself and be in your personal bubble. And also the COVID created this environment. So you were very great in creating communities, and we have to keep those communities alive. But when we hear, for example, in the metro, like, be aware of not getting very close to other people, for me, that's totally frightening, because that goes against building the community. So we have to learn again building community, and we are here in the IETM exactly for that. This is a good occasion to relearn and to rewire the network.
Coming back to the word of digital and technical possibilities, although I'm old, I'm very happy about these possibilities and using it a lot. But there's a danger. We have a discussion going on, I think not only in Germany, that there is a danger after a young generation, but not only young generation, that learned about theater very often through streaming, or through seeing theater performances on the television or on computers. And it's of course very easy. You sit at home, you have your drink, you can switch it off if it's boring, and you do not learn the respect for the people on stage. I mean, if you go to a theater, you have to buy a ticket, you have to sit in the space, and it would be very unpolite to leave the performance during it goes on. So there is a learning process and a respect from the audience to the artistic persons in front of you. And the discussion is really on, do we maybe are in the danger of losing this habit of going to a theater, to sitting through a performance and having a whole new world of spectators, of public that sits at home. And I think that would be the death and the end of the performing arts. I mean, I say it so dramatically, because this chance of being together in a space to witness the art and culture, the power of it on yourself, on the space, on the place you are in it with many, many other people who share this feeling. This is for me the most important chance of a theatrical performance. So I think that's also something we have to transmit, to talk about these chances of learning about art by being in a theater together with others, and then afterwards to share your experiences by having a drink, by going home together, by talking about it, which rarely happens when you see it, even if you see it with 2 or 3 friends at home on television. So this is also something I think we have to transmit, the power of live art and the power of being together on experiences of this live art. So this is also an appeal in a way. Don't forget the need to really have this marvelous possibility to have a theater with people in it, like here today. So let's fight for that.
Yeah, nowadays at Hodworks, we are more and more asked to share our pieces and to stream them. And in a very ironic way, it's sometimes it's just not possible, and we can't share our arts. And it's even better this way because it should be live arts. And we just can't share them because in Hodworks, there is a lot of nudity on stage. And with the digital world, you can be trapped very easily with nudity. Like when our artists discover that they figure at porn sites because of the nudity. And so on one way, it's like so lucky because on one hand, yeah, we could not go really live, but also we could this way kind of protect our dancers. And it's so paradoxical at the end because you can't go live, but you also can't stream because of the misuse of the of the images. And so finally, we really have to struggle for performing really live. It becomes very important. But there was another thing that we were talking about, and it was sustainability. And it's so hard to find answers to sustainability. We had a little chat before coming to stage, and we touched on that topic as well, of that 1 year ago, when the IETM was made online in Budapest, we had a discussion about sustainable touring. And it's a very important topic, and it's very hard to find answers to that. Because if you want to travel, how would you become sustainable? How would you do it? Streaming would be a very good solution, but it kills the live part of performing arts for which we exist as a sector. So also these coming days, maybe there is some transmission of knowledge from your side on how to do sustainable touring when it goes against the economic point of view of touring, how to do it in a capitalist world.
It includes cross-border co-production. I mean, traveling is also very important. And we were talking about it. Every idea which came up has another idea against it. So when we thought of maybe keeping more local touring, then we risk the danger that groups and artists far away from us that need these contacts and they need our cooperation and co-production are left out again. So, I mean, just as an example, it's really difficult to find realistic answers to these questions. And I would be very happy if at the end of these 4 days, 3 days, there are maybe some new answers. And I think that's the task of the young generation, to really find these answers. They can be completely radical, very new, very something, but please really think about it, work on it. We need it. Otherwise, how could we go with a good consciousness into the future days of performing arts?
And I think maybe we don't need to look for the perfect solution, but for better solutions. So just so that we can consider things and what we could put in place, each of us, that would, you know, move us closer to a more, sustainable an economy of ecology, if we could talk about that in how we produce works, the time we give to artists to create, how we travel works around, what is it that we're sharing? Why do we want to share a particular work or the work of a particular artist? You know, coming back to those questions, because we were talking at lunch and we were saying, yeah, well, there's this, of course, but this is an idea that's been around forever, but why not, you know, bring it back, like sort of rationalizing touring and making sure that when an artist is programmed somewhere, they will play in a lot of theatres in the same region, and that it makes sense to bring them over from Senegal or wherever the artists may be coming from, this troupe. And then it was like, yeah, but then what about the local scene? And it's like, all this has to be kept in a kind of balance. And then Nele was saying when this was something that was organized by certain theatre directors and programmers, at one point they were accused of being a theatre mafia, because of course when you support particular artists over a period of time, so it's more sustainable for that artist as well, you are kind of like, other artists won't have the room to come into those circles. So it's finding a balance maybe, and finding just better solutions. There are simple things, of course, to do with, you know, trying to travel when possible using the train, but it is a really tricky conversation, like how actually do we integrate these ideas in a simple and effective way in our daily thinking, in our daily lives as people working in theatre, whether we're performers, students, directors of institutions.
And just before we come to an end, I think our time is over. Just to add to that, I think it's also important to really think consciously, why should I go on touring? I mean, there are quite a lot of interesting theatrical dance projects that are very important, high quality, but it's fit for the local or broader local audiences. And it's not absolutely necessary to tour every project. So maybe when we can reduce, based on all these ideas, we can reduce touring, not because for financial or other reasons, because we really understand touring is not just traveling somewhere, but knowing to whom, for what I go on that tour. So I think there's a lot of questions for the next days to discuss, and I hope there will be solutions. And I think we have to come to an end, and I hope you have a marvelous time, and I hope there will be maybe some documents after this meeting to really transmit the ideas that came up during these 4 days, and I hope you have a very good working time in these days in Lyon. Thank you for having been invited, and go to work.
Thank you, György, Kylie, and Nele. Why strong conversation and encouragement to all of us on how to behave in the coming days and into the future. Embrace our shared history, our resilience, our collective intelligence, our privilege, fight for being together and rewiring our network. Remember, transmission is a two-way thing. Go out and do horizontal sharing and learning, create communities, and while doing it, dear friends, remember your masks, your health passes, respect distance, and keep up the good spirit. And having said that, this concludes our welcoming keynote, and we make our way to our welcome reception, held on the other side of the river in the beautiful narrow boat Penis Modulo. See you over there. Take care.